Some really crazy things are happening in the world around us. Let's talk about and comment on them from a Christian perspective. The women on The View think they know what's Christian and what's not Christian. Take a look at the unbelievable thing they recently said on their show.
It angers me when people are like, this woke stuff, it's gotta go. That's telling me that you don't care about my lived experience. You don't care about the oppression of the LGBTQ community. You don't care about the oppression of the disabled. You don't care about the oppression of immigrants. You don't care about your fellow neighbor. And that is ungodly. That is not Christian. So.
Well, yeah, but you know what the most ironic thing is? They don't care about it, and they don't care about it while wearing big fat crosses around their necks.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
You know what?
Do you want to know what's not Christian? It's not Christian to celebrate LGBTQ, instead of calling it sin, which is what God calls it. It's not Christian to break laws and enter a country illegally. And yes, wokeness is not Christian, because it's about discriminating against particular groups of people that are unjustifiably considered oppressors.
So first, identify these disadvantaged groups. Secondly, assess group outcomes. Thirdly, assign blame for disparate outcomes. If we see disparate outcomes, we have to assign blame. And then finally, redistribute power and resources to redress those grievances. That's the mission of social justice. That is not the mission of biblical justice. That is antithetical to the mission of biblical justice.
The women on The View are mocking Christians who don't buy into their unchristian view of identity politics. As Christians, we follow what the Bible teaches about sin and about every single human being as equally made in the image of God. It's pretty unbelievable hearing these women lecturing Christians about Christianity, considering they have said things like this on their show.
Like I said before, I don't know if I want that. It's one thing to talk to Jesus. It's another thing when Jesus talks to you. It's called mental illness, if I'm not correct. Right, I'm hearing voices.
I don't know that they hide behind religion, because I said this on this show once before. Jesus would be the Grand Marshal at the Pride Parade.
There's a reason why Christians don't take these women seriously. It's because they're actually not Christians, and they know almost nothing about what real Christianity is. Did you hear about the scandal involving an X account named Patriarchy Hannah? I periodically saw posts from this account, and didn't think much about it. I didn't follow her or know anything about her supposed backstory. But apparently, she was a relatively well-known figure in the conservative Christian world on X, and it was recently discovered that the entire account was all a complete lie.
So there's this woman, and she went by Patriarchy Hannah on X, and she was a non-account, and she was like super trad, had this husband Tony. She would always post about how her husband was this contractor, and they had bought an abandoned town somewhere in the middle of the country, and they had named it Tony Town because her husband's name was Tony. So they would joke about Tony Town, and Tony had this like tiny little Twitter account. But this woman, Patriarchy Hannah, was allegedly 37 years old with 14 kids that she had adopted, homeschooled all of them, being a good submitting.
Is this real?
Just wait. Like submitting to her husband Tony, living in Tony Town, where they had like moved their whole family.
Apparently some people had been suspicious of this Patriarchy Hannah account for a while, and now I can see why. 37 years old with 14 adopted kids? That sounds absolutely fictional, even for someone like me, who thinks large families are great and a blessing from God.
She also said that she had been sex trafficked as a child, had like survived lupus, I think, all of this stuff. So that's why they had adopted these 14 kids. So she would post about this all the time. She would be in Twitter spaces at like 3 a.m. And there were a few people who called out like, this is kind of odd.
Yeah.
Like you have 14 kids and you have time to be on a Twitter space at like 3 a.m.
It
like,
sounds like
a
Elon.
bit odd. Yeah.
As someone with 3 kids and 1 on the way, I can confirm that it's absolutely unrealistic for a parent, especially one with 14 kids, to be on Twitter Spaces at 3 a.m. in the morning. This sounds like someone who is working really hard at fabricating a story, not a parent living in reality.
This lady is like pretending like she's being some like homeschool mom. So all of this is happening. Meanwhile, she's shaming other women for not being as trad as her. And not just, this was not an account that would just post things like, this is what I believe, traditional marriage is, because there are those accounts, I follow some of those, and it's like, they're frolicking in the fields in their sundresses, and sourdough, whatever, the trad aesthetic, that's fine. This woman would literally be in people's replies and quote tweeting them kind of like Pearl-esque, but on the other side of the aisle, of like literally attacking women and shaming them and saying like, you're not Christian enough, you're not biblical enough, your husband must be disgusted of you, all of this stuff. And it created this whole like veil of shame.
I don't have a problem with criticizing people who are communicating views and lifestyles that are in opposition to the Bible's teachings. But I do have a problem with how hypocritical this Patriarchy Hannah account was in doing this. She lied about who she was and the kind of life she was living, and pretended to be living this impossible fairy tale-like life. And it was from this web of lies that she supposedly defended biblical Christianity.
But she had also created this entire community. She had a Discord. Women would DM her and they would like become friends, and because she had said that she had been sex trafficked, all of this stuff, they would like
so dystopian.
They would open up to her, all of this stuff. She never shared a real photo of herself, and she would give people her phone number, but she would never get on FaceTime. And some people would be like, guys, again, like I was saying, like, this is kind of weird. Like, why? Like, this doesn't add up.
Right.
And everybody else in the trad community would be like, oh, you're, jealous of her because she has it all together. Anyway.
It's a lot easier to craft a fictional life. And what's particularly bad about all of this was that this Patriarchy Hannah account was criticizing others. Yet she wasn't even living out or experiencing any of the challenges of her pretend life.
Finally came crashing down this guy named Ryan Duff, or Duffy, I believe, on X. Did a whole expose on Valentine's Day, exposing her. She has no kids. She's not married to Tony.
All fraudulent.
She lives with her parents. The photos that she posted of their home was various different pictures from different Zillow listings. The one photo that she did show somebody was from another woman's Facebook page. She lives with her parents and apparently has done different forms of like porn. And so she was like collecting like memberships from people and like giving all of this advice. And so the entire like trad community on right-wing Twitter, which just feels so dystopian of me to be like even saying that, like this niche community on right-wing Twitter broke apart. Like all hell broke loose because they were like, oh, how could somebody be saying one thing and doing the other?
That's actually insane.
Yes.
The owner of this account has since apologized, with part of her apology saying, I just want to say that I am sorry for the lies I told and the hurt I caused. I never intended for this account to become as big as it did. And once things started snowballing, I enjoyed the relationships I'd built and didn't know how to put an end to it. This Patriarchy Hannah story is a reminder of the dangers of fame and popularity. I'm sure she enjoyed the growth and attention she was getting, and continued to feed people lies to get more of it. As Christians, we need to value the truth and the gospel of Jesus Christ more than we value popularity and fame. Nicole Shanahan is an attorney, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, best known for serving as Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s running mate in his 2024 independent presidential campaign. Nicole recently said something about a relationship with Christianity and the Bible that I honestly didn't expect to hear.
I have spent time with the Bible and Christianity.
I noticed you're wearing a cross.
Yeah. This year taught me a lot, and it taught me that of all of the, intellectual experiences I've had with spirituality, there's only one book, and that is the New Testament, that helps you understand how to go up against evil. Like to really arm yourself for it. Old Testament has some of it too, but the New Testament really does teach you how to do it with a great deal of grace and faith.
That's really encouraging to hear coming from someone like Nicole, who has historically been a strong supporter of ending the lives of preborn babies. I don't think Nicole is completely against that evil yet, but she does seem to be moderating in her position, similar to RFK Jr. as well, who had originally said he believes women should be able to end preborn lives, even up to the moment of birth.
And I spoke to Bobby about this, and at the end of the day, he says, yes, this is a woman's choice, period. And I said, even up till birth? And yes was his answer. And so to me...
But Nicole is now saying that that's not what RFK Jr. meant, and it's not what she believes either.
Because I'm not voting for anybody who says go for it up till birth.
No,
I won't do that.
No. And that is not Bobby's position as I understand it. My understanding with Bobby's position is that, every abortion is a tragedy.
Yes,
is a loss of life. My understanding is that he absolutely believes in limits on abortion. And we've talked about this. I do not think... I don't know where that came from.
He just very clearly said, because I pushed, and I'm like, wait, up till, he said, it should always be a woman's choice, always, even up until that moment. And that is where anyone who says that, well, you're going to lose a lot of people, because that full term option is something that that is just scary.
Well, Here's my understanding on his position. That is not my understanding of his position, and I think maybe there was a miscommunication there. But I think what he's saying is that it should always feel like a woman's choice.
Yes, sure.
To the final moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're forcing a woman to have a baby, that is a very painful situation for that woman to be in.
This is still a really anti-Bible position, since what Nicole refers to as forcing a woman to have a baby basically means not ending the life of a preborn baby. So I don't think Nicole is quite at the biblical position yet, but it does seem like she's moving in that direction. She was even recently baptized and posted an article about it on X. Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively used to be two of the most popular people in Hollywood, but both Ryan and Blake's reputations have completely tanked recently because of controversy. But before we talk about the recent news, here's a reminder of what Ryan Reynolds believes about Christians who believe in the biblical view of marriage.
What are your thoughts on gay marriage? I mean, do you think that, obviously you're not opposed to it?
God, no. Yeah. I'm not a monster. I think it's fantastic. I think it's it's been legal in Canada for 10 years now. So to me, it just seems crazy.
Why are you guys so much more advanced? Why are you so much more progressive?
Ryan basically thinks Christians are monsters for believing that God designed marriage to be between one man and one woman. So beneath Ryan's nice guy smile is a guy who really looks down on Christians and what they believe in. And in a surprising turn of events, Ryan has suddenly started losing his golden boy status in Hollywood due to being involved in a controversy involving his wife, Blake Lively.
She seems like kind of a jerk. Wow, she's like kind of a bully. She's rather mean. And to people who are less powerful than she is, less well-known than she is, and so on. Let's not forget she's married to Ryan Reynolds, who's one of the biggest stars in the world. His fame dwarfs hers. But the point is she's a part of a power couple.
Blake filed a lawsuit saying she was the victim of sexual harassment from Justin Baldoni, her co-star in the movie It Ends With Us. And she tried to use her relationships with Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift to intimidate Justin.
They have text messages in which Blake tells Justin, this is in the latest lawsuit, I know you've never watched Game of Thrones, but when you get around to watching it, you'll realize I'm Khaleesi and these are my dragons. And I have the best dragons in the business, right? Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift. She's saying, F with me and we'll crush you. My dragons and I, the biggest movie star, one of them in the planet, the biggest pop star in the planet, and I will hurt you unless I get my way.
But Blake's plan completely backfired after people started discovering the actual truth. And now both she and Ryan Reynolds have gained a reputation as bullies who use their star power to pressure and intimidate people who are not as famous.
And now he's going full Johnny Depp on her to show that she was the bully, she was the one harassing him, and this guy who had, comparatively very little power was forced now to come out and tell the truth about Blake Lively.
So, I mean, this is all more fascinating than I thought it would be, to be honest with you. And I have to say that the blowback to Ryan Reynolds, I think, is going to be pretty severe because his whole image is this cool guy who's very easy to get along with, friends with everybody, jokey. But if it turns out that he's standing sort of in the wings in the shadows, ready to go after anybody who crosses Blake Lively's bizarre machinations, that's not a great look for him.
No.
I know that's way more Hollywood drama than you probably wanted to hear, but I thought what's happening here is significant. Because despite giving off the impression that he's just a really nice guy all the time, Ryan seems to actually be not only a bully, but a bully who uses his fame and power to pressure others to see things his way. And I, for one, am glad that someone who sees Christians as being monsters simply for believing in God's design for marriage is losing a significant amount of popularity in the culture. Speaking of famous and powerful people who hate biblical Christianity losing popularity in the culture, take a look at the response that Taylor Swift got when she was shown on screen at the Super Bowl. A surprising number of people were booing Taylor Swift because they now see her as a completely out-of-touch celebrity who is trying to use her fame to impose her morality on the rest of the population, which largely disagrees with her. Do you remember this clip of Taylor claiming to be a Christian and knowing what Christians stand for?
And I can't see another commercial and see her disguising these policies behind the words Tennessee Christian values. Those aren't Tennessee Christian values. I live in Tennessee. I am Christian. That's not what we stand for.
Yet Taylor publicly supports and promotes the most radical LGBTQ legislation out there. Legislation that will destroy the lives of countless children.
Screw you, Taylor Swift. That's how I would like to begin. But she says the reason she's voting for Kamala Harris is because of Tim Walz's LGBTQ stance. Do you know what Tim Walz has done on the LGBTQ front? Well, here's what's gonna happen. A little girl is going to find herself down a rabbit hole on Reddit. Reddit's gonna tell her she's actually a boy. And she's gonna get sucked into this gender cult. And she's gonna say, Mom and Dad, I want puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, which will sterilize her. And they're gonna say, no, you're a girl. And she's gonna say, but I want top surgery, this benign thing, this double mastectomy where I'll have tubes coming out of me and I'll never breastfeed a child. I want that too. And they're gonna say no. And she's gonna go to a judge in Minnesota, and because of Tim Walz, the court will take custody of her, use the Medicaid funds in Minnesota to provide her all of those things, chop off her breasts, sterilize her with the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones. And when this girl inevitably comes to the conclusion that she didn't want any of this, that it only added to her problems, which were the divorce and the acne and the puberty and not any trans issue, who is she gonna go to then? This is all because of Tim Walz. That's what Minnesota is doing right now to little girls and boys, taking custody away from the parents so that they can have these procedures without any loving parent there to help. And that's what Taylor Swift just endorsed for your children. So screw you, Taylor Swift. Thank you for saying that.
I think celebrities like Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift appear nice on the outside, but they actually stand firmly against Christians and biblical teachings. And I think it's good that the facade of their niceness is finally being exposed, so people can now see just how antagonistic they actually are towards biblical Christianity.
Essentially, our Lord promises them persecution as a result of hatred. He tells them and all who will follow them and name the name of Christ that they will be hated by the world. Obviously, this began with the hatred of Christ himself. They hated him so much they killed him. And it didn't take long for that hate to transfer to his followers. Christians refused idolatrous temple worship, and so they isolated themselves from the social life. So they were alienated and isolated from the political life, alienated, isolated from the social life. And add to that, they were living pure and righteous lives, which were a constant personal rebuke to the debauchery of the Roman world. We have died to the world and the world to us. We're citizens of heaven. Here we are aliens and strangers, but we are also ambassadors, given the ministry of reconciliation to preach the gospel of the substitutionary death and resurrection of Christ. May we be faithful and useful to you in that most lofty of all tasks in the world. We ask in the name of Christ. Amen.
Hey, I'm Mike. If you want to support what I'm doing and help these videos reach more people, would you consider clicking that subscribe button? Thank you so much for watching this video until the end. Here is another one that you might find interesting.